Hey everybody, Al Johnson here from the Al Johnson Show, and I thought I'd come up here and just wanted to talk about something. And the thing I wanted to talk about most was after thinking upon it and I guess sleeping on it, I wanted to come up here and talk about my honest feelings about the death of Hulk Hogan. Now, if you guys don't know, about about 2 weeks ago, Hulk Hogan passed away, and it's since come out that the cause of his death was a heart attack, which spawned from a history of having chronic heart conditions, apparently. And when I initially made that short, if you guys saw it, I initially made that short because I was just shocked. I mean, of course, it's Hulk Hogan, arguably the most famous wrestler on planet Earth. How could it not be shocking? I was just expressing my shock. But over the last 2 weeks after his passing, there's been a lot said about his death. Unfortunately, there are those who celebrate it because of some of the things he's done in the last year of his life, notably supporting President Carrot and spouting a bunch of nonsense. And people feel like, oh, and also the fact that a decade ago, oddly enough, the day he passed away was 10 years since WWE fired him for when he was exposed for saying racist stuff on a leaked tape. And there were those who were happy that he died because of who he chose to support and the things he said about black people. And also some were celebrating his death because, oh, he was a selfish person in the wrestling business and it's better without him. Even though arguably without him, the wrestling we know as of today wouldn't be what it was. And of course, there were people like me who were like, man, he's a legend to the business. He was a joy to watch and this and that. And I thought I'd come up here and I guess give my honest thoughts and say that, of course, there's the wrestling fan in me that's sad because, like I said, I grew up with Hulk Hogan. Obviously, I didn't grow up at the height of his popularity. I was actually born. I was born basically right when he was, I don't want to say on a decline, but I was born in a year where people started to veer off Hulkamania. You know, eat your vitamins, say your prayers, let me tell you something, brother, and all that stuff. People were getting tired of that. Hardcore wrestling fans started to get tired of that. And about a year or so after I was born, he had left WWF and joined WCW and tried to do the same thing over there. And for a bit, it was working. People were like, oh, Hulk Hogan, all that. But then over time, it's like corny, lame, too much of the same. Then in '96, when my niece was born, hey, hey Ruby Chan, subscribe to her Twitch. The year that she was born, well, 2 months before she was born, the NWO formed. And everything changed. The wrestling world changed. And about 3 years after that, I started watching wrestling. And then I had old videotapes of past WWF, and I saw footage of Hulk Hogan. As a matter of fact, the first Hulk Hogan match I remember ever seeing was for my dad. He had a tape of WrestleMania 5 where Hulk Hogan fought Randy Savage in the main event for the championship. And now, I was watching wrestling because of those tapes, but I was really into wrestling when the Attitude Era came and people like Stone Cold and The Rock and Big Show and Undertaker, Kane, Triple H, Mankind, Steve Blackman, X-Pac, Hardcore Holly, the list goes on and on and on. That was my era of wrestling. And 2002, when he came back with the NWO, that was the first time I saw like Hulk Hogan in a modern concept. And I'll say it's I'll say it here. My favorite Hulk Hogan match ever is obviously the match with him and The Rock at WrestleMania 18. Shout out to my sister for recording that. And I remember watching that match, and I was just so I was in awe because it was my first time ever seeing Hulk Hogan wrestle. Obviously not live, but it was the first time I ever saw him wrestle. Because I remember seeing him wrestle in videotapes. I was like, okay, that's cool and all that and all. Man, that's awesome. But that was the first time I actually got to see him wrestle. And it's crazy. The story with that match is that leading into the match in the NWO, Hulk Hogan was the bad guy. He was demeaning the audience. He was hurting The Rock. He almost tried to kill him with the ambulance truck. And in that match in the Toronto Skydome, which is where he fought the Ultimate Warrior years prior, the fans, they cheered. They cheered him because it's like, man, it's cool to see Hulk Hogan back. It's cool to see him in this environment, in this arena, and they booed The Rock. And legend says that Hulk Hogan and The Rock, they switched sides that night during the match because they heard the crowd and how crazy they were for Hogan. And Hogan was the good guy, Rock was the bad guy. Even though people loved The Rock, it was just that nostalgia for Hulk Hogan switched things around. And of course, who could forget in that match, The Rock, I believe he hit the rock bottom and Hulk Hogan kicked out and he did this, and he did all that. Everyone went nuts. I went nuts. The Rock ultimately won, and then almost as if an audible was called, like, yeah, we gotta switch things up. The NWO beat up Hulk Hogan and they kicked him out the group because the crowd went nuts for him. And after that, Hulk Hogan, he won the WWF Championship for the last time. And ever since that match and that moment, I was a Hulk Hogan fan. I mean, I always saw clips of the match with him and Shawn Michaels from SummerSlam 2005, where Shawn Michaels was overselling, acting like a crazy lunatic for everything Hulk Hogan did. And as the years went on, I was just a Hogan fan. I was a Hulkamaniac. No, I didn't eat my vitamins like that, and no, I didn't say my prayers at that time, but I was encaptured with Hulkamania. Then, when Hogan Knows Best came out, and then I started reading things about Hulk Hogan and some of the shady stuff he did in wrestling, like how he didn't want to pass the torch to Macho Man Randy Savage, and he was selfish and not want to give up being the number one dude in wrestling, or how apparently Jesse the Body Ventura, I ain't got time to bleed, how he was trying to start a union for wrestlers so wrestlers could make their own money, and or how the company would have to be forced to pay the wrestlers like employees and pay for their medical insurance and all this and that. Hulk Hogan apparently told Vince about it, and Vince said, no, that ain't happening. And Jesse Ventura asked, who got in Vince's ear? Who told him? It was Hogan, and he hated Hulk Hogan for that. To this day, up until his death, he hated Hogan for that. And then of course came how can I forget, when he joined TNA, it was awesome. It was like Hulk Hogan TNA, awesome. Then you read about how a lot of the money that was spent on them then go into helping out TNA, and TNA suffered from it. And AJ Styles, who was Mr. TNA since 2002, he was told, hey, if we're going to re-sign you to a new contract, you got to take a pay cut so Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff can get more money. And AJ Styles is like, forget that. I ain't doing that. Like, I bled for this company. You want me to give up half of my salary for them? No. And he left. And that was unfortunate. And of course, when the sex when the sex tape came out with him and his ex-friend's wife, and then he was caught on tape saying racist stuff. I made a Facebook post saying, man, I was disappointed. I was like, man, I grew up watching Hulk Hogan, and that's how he feels about black people. Sorry, that's my dog having a little temper tantrum. Um, it's like that's how he feels, and WWE fired him for that. And I believe a year after that, he came back internally within the company. He had a meeting with the black wrestlers on the roster, and he said, "Hey, be careful, man. These phones, they be recording things. Be careful about what you say on camera because it'll be used against you, and protect yourself out there." And it's like he didn't really apologize for saying what he said. And what's that famous mantra? He's not sorry for what he said. He was sorry that he got caught. And then a bunch of other things. I mean, and then of course, like I said, Hulk Hogan, he didn't just break my heart with that, but he broke my heart more when he openly endorsed President Carrot and said like, oh, if Kamala Harris was a wrestler, I give her the leg drop, brother. And it's also quite sad that the last wrestling memory of Hulk Hogan is that when he was on Monday Night Raw this past January, when it debuted on Netflix in Los Angeles, he was booed out of the arena. And to think, this is the man that made wrestling what it is today. It's because of him we love wrestling. Because of him, I love wrestling. You could say, to quote pop singer Chaperone, he's your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler. For a period of time when I was growing up, he was one of my favorite wrestlers. And then you see and you hear certain things about him, and you see the actions that he did that negatively impacted not just some form of wrestling, but the culture as a whole. And it's like, not gonna lie, it reminded me of Chris Benoit. The wrestler fan in me was sad. I was like, wow, I'll never see Chris Benoit wrestle again. But the human me, Al Johnson, is like, but then Christopher Michael Benoit did what he did, and screw him. Now I'm stuck here feeling like it's sad I'll never see Hulk Hogan again. I'll never get to see him do the again. But the human me is like, but Terrence Bollea, he lived a polarizing life, and the things he did up to his death disappointed me. And it's like, so now I'm mixed. It's like, I'm gonna miss seeing Hulk Hogan, but Terrence Bollea, let's just say he may have lived a professionally blessed life, but personal life, and how can I forget? There was a car accident that involved his son that had somebody killed, and Hogan tried to say oh well, my son, he wasn't at fault, even though I believe Nick, he was in some way at fault for it. But Hogan tried to oh no, my son, he's not a bad guy. It wasn't intentional. It's like, dude, your son was involved in something. Admonish him, but he didn't do that. So yeah, not gonna lie, I'm mixed. I miss Hulk Hogan, but I don't miss Terrence Bollea. And like I said, it's sad that his final appearance in wrestling, he was booed out of the arena. That's unfortunate. I still say I'm gonna miss Hulk Hogan. May he rest in peace. But if Terrence Bollea would have had to do some change in his life, some personal change, he would have been more fondly remembered, not just as what he did for wrestling, but what he did in life as a whole. But sadly, that will never happen. But still, I will say, rest in peace, Hulkster.